This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. with free weekly content and free shipping on orders over $150. You can save 5% site-wide by using the promo code MTGMudsta. I'm also sponsored by Face to Face Games, Canada's premier Magic the Gathering store. Using the promo code MTGMudsta will get you 5% off site-wide, with eligible orders getting free shipping Canada-wide. If you're looking for a direct way to help the channel, please consider joining my Patreon and becoming a member of the generic Goblin Gang. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game is a little bit different as I filmed it with Kevin, Mika, and Maximus, and we'd arranged a Secret Santa of budget decks under $50. I had made Maximus Averna the Chaos Bloom, and his opening hand consisted of Mosswort Bridge, Mountain, Gala Greeters, Flamekin Herald, Search for Tomorrow, Springbloom Druid, and a Sweetglum Recluse. Mika had built me a Soraya the Falconer Mono White Flyers deck, and I keep 4 Plains, Battle Screech, Inheritance, and a Duskrider Falcon. Kevin had picked Mika's name as the Secret Santa, and he built him Selenia Dark Angel. And Mika's opening hand consisted of Eradicator Valkyrie, 2 Plains, Swamp, Kambal Console of Allocation, Warlock Class, and Sorin Vengeful Bloodlord. And last but not least, Kevin received Garna Bloodfist of Keld from Maximus, and he keeps Mountain, Swamp, Overseer of the Damned, Last Ditch Effort, Death Tyrant, Priest of Forgotten Gods, and a Dark Tutelage. Max wins the die roll and starts us off. He plays a tap Mosswort Bridge, hiding away one of his cards. Kevin draws and plays a Mountain. Mika just plays a Swamp and casts a Warlock class. I have a Plains for turn that gets tapped for an Inheritance. Maximus plays a Mountain, and then pays 1 green to suspend a Search for Tomorrow. Kevin plays a Swamp, and taps 2 for Priest of Forgotten Gods. Mika has a Plains for turn, and is then able to level up Warlock class, looking at their top 3, putting 1 to hand, and bidding the rest. He passes after that. I've got another Plains as if I have a choice, and play a Duskrider Falcon and pass. Maximus ticks down his search and then draws for turn. He plays out a Gala Greeters and passes to Kevin. Kevin draws, casting a Gutter Bones, but has no land to play and has to pass. Mika's got a Plains, and then taps enough for Oketra's Monument. I've got a Plains as well, and then play Sayora to buff my birds, and more importantly, give them banding because, you know. I then move to combat and swing my Duskrider Falcon at Mika for 2, and after it connects, I pass. Maximus' Search for Tomorrow goes off, and he goes to find an island and puts it to play. He then casts a Bloodwater Entity and puts the Search from Tomorrow on top, and gets a treasure token from the Gala Greeter seeing it enter. He then goes to combat and joins the Mika hate train and pokes him for 1. Kevin draws, but is sadly stuck on 2 lands. With nothing to do, he passes his turn 4. Mika casts a Talisman of Hierarchy. He then casts a Kambal, making a warrior token from the monument, and passes to me. I've got a Plains for turn, and then cast Battle Screech, making 2 bird tokens and losing 2 from Kambal. I then go to combat and swing my Falcon at Mika again for 2, and pass after that. Maximus draws and sacrifices his treasure to suspend the Search for Tomorrow again. He then casts a Springbloom Druid, sacrificing an island as it comes in to find an island and a forest, and gets another treasure token from the Gala Greeters. Going to combat, he swings the Bloodwater Entity at Kevin for 3 thanks to Prowess, and passes after that. Kevin draws but still can't find a land, moving to his discard phase, pitching a card, and then passing. Mika plays a Cliffhaven Vampire, making another warrior token, and then moves to combat. He swings the warrior from the last turn at Maximus for 1, who takes the hit, and Mika passes. I draw and play a Plains, hitting my land drops like a champ, and then cast a Cloud Chaser Kestrel, destroying Mika's Warlock class. Going to combat, I continue poking Mika with the Dusk Rider Falcon, and pass after that. Maximus downticks the Search for Tomorrow again, and then draws. He casts a Flamekin Herald, making another tap treasure token, and then cracks the other treasure token to help play the adventure on the young blue dragon, essentially getting to opt. This has a Cabal draining max for 2, and we then all lose 1 due to the Clifthaven Vampire. Going to combat, Maximus punishes Kevin for keeping the 2-land hand, and boops him for 3 with the Bloodwater Entity. He passes after that. Maximus hitting him must have been good luck, because Kevin draws and finally finds a land with a tapped Akum Refuge, gaining 1 as it comes in. He passes after that. Mika draws, playing out Soren, Vengeful Bloodlord in his main phase. He upticks the Walker to deal 1 to the Gala Greeters, and gains 1, which deals 1 to all of us again. For combat, he swings both the Warriors at Kevin, and Kevin blocks one of them with the Priest, and takes the other hit. Mika gains 2 life from this, and we all get trained 2 more from the Vampire. With nothing else, he passes. I draw and play a Plains. I go straight to combat, swinging Bird Team 1 at Soren, and Mika lets him get taken out. With my job done, I pass my turn to Maximus. Maximus removes the final counter from Search for Tomorrow on his upkeep, and casts it, searching for a land, and then drawing for turn. He's got enough mana for Averna, and this lets him cascade thanks to the earlier cast Flamekin Herald. And he flips into a Rampant Growth, and he casts it, finding an island to put into play. He then casts a Crystal Shard once that's done. This has Maximus losing a total of 9 from Cabal and the Vampire Drains, and he then goes to combat. He swings a 5/5 Bloodwater Entity at Mika, who takes the hit, and after that, he passes. Kevin draws and taps 3 mana to play a Dark Tutelage to hopefully find some lands. With nothing else, he passes. Mika draws and plays a Plains. He then taps enough for Defiler of Flesh and passes turn. I draw and play Ravnica at War. I exile all multicolored permanents to get rid of Mika's Drain Engine, and then I play a Plains. I go to combat, swinging at Mika for 3 with the Cloud Chaser Kestrel. In my post-combat main phase, I then flashback Battle Screech by tapping some birds and getting more birds and passing. Maximus draws and recasts Averna, cascading into a Reckless Impulse. He casts that, and exiles 2 cards off the top, unfortunately which he can't cast, and he passes after that. Kevin reveals Annex, hardened by the Forge off the Dark Tutelage, taking 3, puts it to his hand, and then draws for turn. He then plays Annex, and activates the Priest to sacrifice it, and Gutter Bones, to get double black mana, draw a card, and force everyone else to sacrifice a creature and take 2. In response to my creature dying, I use Inheritance to draw a card, and Kevin then plays a Mountain, and then taps 3 for a Burnished Heart. After that, he passes turn. Mika draws and plays a Swamp. He then uses the Defiler to help cast a Pontiff of Blight, losing 2. He gives the Defiler trigger to a token, and then moves to combat. Mika swings the Defiler at Max, who just takes the 4. He then passes, and during his end step, I flash in a Force of Virtue by exiling a white card from my hand, and the enchantment enters the battlefield. I draw and play a Plains. I then tap 4 birds to play Sephara Skyblade, which isn't a bird, but I'll give it a pass because it's so cheap to cast. Going to combat, I swing my Dusk Rider Falcon at Mika for 3, and then pass the turn. During my end step, Maximus activates the Crystal Shard and targets Mika's Defiler. Mika has the mana, but decides to let it go back to his hand, and we move to Maximus' turn. Maximus draws and plays a Modi, cascading into a Commander Sphere and putting a Command Tower into play with Averna's ability. He then plays a Highland Forest, and then plays the Adventure on Sword Coast Serpent to bounce the Pontiff of Blight back to Mika's hand. Going to combat, Maximus swings the Flamekin Herald and Averna at Mika, who double blocks on Averna with his 2 tokens. Maximus then activates the Crystal Shard to save his commander, and after that, passes to Kevin. Kevin reveals a Rite of Belzenok off the Dark Tutelage, taking 4 and putting to hand and drawing for turn. He plays a Mountain and goes to combat. He swings a Satyr token at Maximus and a Burnished Heart at Mika, and they both take the hit for 2. After combat, he uses the Priest to sacrifice the 2 Satyr tokens, getting 2 black mana, drawing a card, and forcing us to sacrifice a creature and lose some life. In response to my losing a creature, I pay 3 into Inheritance to draw a card. Kevin then sacrifices the Burnished Heart to go and grab 2 lands, and once that's done, plays out a Sling-Gang Lieutenant and passes turn. Mika draws and plays a Tainted Field. He has enough mana for Eradicator Valkyrie and passes to me after that. I've got a Plains for turn, and then play out a Glorious Anthem to continue the bird buffs and go to combat. I swing the Duskrider Falcon, 2 bird tokens, and Sephara at Kevin, and the Cloud Chaser Kestrel at Max. Mika responds by using Despark and targets Sephara. She gets exiled, but Maximus and Kevin still have no blocks, and take their medicine. After that, I pass turn. Maximus draws and replays Averna from his hand. He then holds up his mana, passing after that. Kevin reveals a Reassembling Skeleton from the Dust Tutelage, losing 2 and putting it to hand, and then draws for turn. He then plays a Rite of Belzenok, making some Cleric tokens. He then drops some skeletons in with a Reassembling Skeleton and a Persistent Specimen, and decides to choose Violence. He casts a Last-Ditch Effort and activates the Priest in response, sacrificing 2 creatures to deal 2 damage to his opponents, make 2 black mana, and draw a card. Maximus responds by casting a Sweetgum Recluse, and gets to cascade twice thanks to a Modi, hitting a Soul Ring and a Dark Apostle. The Sweetgum resolves and puts 3 +1/+1 counters onto Max's new creatures, and he even generously puts them onto the skeletons on Kevin's side. Kevin then sacrifices his goblins to the Sling-Gang Lieutenant to drain me for 3, and ends up only sacrificing 1 creature to Last-Ditch Effort, pinging a Warrior token. After all that, I get to pay 3 mana to Inheritance to draw a card, and Kevin then passes turn. Mika draws and replays the Defiler of Flesh, and then uses its ability to help cast a Nighthawk Scavenger, making 2 tokens in total from the Oketra's Monument. Mika also gets the Defiler trigger and puts it onto the Valkyrie before moving to combat, swinging the Valkyrie at me for 5 because it has Menace. I take the hit, and Mika passes. I draw and drop a Divine Sacrament as a further anthem. I then play a Carrier Pigeons and go to combat. I swing the Falcon at Mika for 5 because it has pro-black, and then pass my turn. During my end step, Maximus sacrifices the Commander Sphere to draw a card. Max draws and plays Rashmi. He then plays a Mulldrifter to draw 2, and gets to play a Forest for turn. He then follows up with a Shardless Agent, which cascades into Inevitable Betrayal. And he gets to put an island into play off of Averna, and then targets Mika with the Betrayal. He goes into Mika's library and puts out a Platinum Angel. He passes after that. Kevin reveals a Dog Detective off the Dark Tutelage, and then draws for turn. He then takes up his Rite of Belzenok and makes 2 more tokens, and then plays the Detective and gets to Surveil for 2. Kevin then follows that up with Garna and goes to combat, swinging the skeletons at me and dealing 8. After that, he passes. Mika draws and plays his Pontiff of Blight again, making a Warrior token and giving the Scavenger the Defiler Pump and Menace. Moving to combat, he swings a Scavenger at Maximus and the Valkyrie at Kevin. With no blockers, Kevin dies, but Maximus double blocks the Scavengers with the Mulldrifter and the Recluse, and then bounces the Mulldrifter to his hand by activating the Crystal Shard. Mika does gain a bunch of life though, and once combat's done, passes turn. I draw and play a Plains. I then play Linden Steadfast Queen and go to combat. I swing 21 points of damage at Mika in the air, and gain some life back off of Linden, and Mika takes the full hit for everything, dropping down to 12. I pass after that. Maximus draws, and casts a Wild Magic Sorcerer, which thanks to Rashmi, flips him into a Beanstalk Giant. the giant goes to his hand, and he follows it up with a young blue dragon, which, because it's cast from exile, cascades into Throes of Chaos, only for Maximus to cascade again. The second cascade hits Harrow, and Maximus also gets to keep 2 lands thanks to Averna from the cascades. Maximus grabs 2 more lands after sacrificing 1 from Harrow, and then plays a mountain for turn. He replays Mulldrifter to draw 2, and then goes to combat. He swings the Platinum Angel at me, dealing 4. And with nothing else, Maximus passes. Mika draws, and plays Greed, using the Defiler's ability to pay 2 instead of the black mana, and then extorts it 4 times, draining us for 4 and gaining 8. Going to combat, Mika swings a Valkyrie at me to take me out, and then moves to pass turn. During his end step, Maximus uses the Crystal Shard and targets the Pontiff, but Mika has the mana to pay it, and does so. Maximus draws and plays a Rain of Riches, flipping a mountain off the Rashmi trigger and putting it to his hand. He then makes 2 treasures as it comes in, and sacrifices one of them to help cast Omnath, Locus of Rage, which lets him cascade thanks to Rain of Riches. And he reveals until he hits an Aurora Phoenix, which then cascades twice. The first cascade hits a Bloodbraid Elf, which gets its own cascade, which in turn reveals until he hits a Wayfarer's Bauble. Then the second Aurora Phoenix cascade hits, and he reveals a Zendikar's Royal, and all those spells resolve then. Maximus then uses the adventure on a Beanstalk Giant to go and find another land, making a 2/2 and a 5/5 elemental from the landfall triggers. Going to combat, he swings his team at Mika, and bounces the Pontiff of Blight with the Crystal Shard. Mika eats the Rashmi with his Defiler, and chumps the Dark Apostle, Averna, and Wild Magic Sorcerer with some tokens, taking the full hit from the rest. In his post-combat main phase, Maximus plays a land to trigger landfall again, and then passes turn. Mika draws and activates Greed 3 times, losing 6 and drawing 3, and then plays a Plains for turn. He casts a Pact Weapon, and discards a land to help equip it onto the Valkyrie. Going to combat, he swings the Valkyrie at Maximus, revealing a Marauding Blight Priest to give it an extra +3/+3. Maximus double blocks with his Phoenix and Mulldrifter, but with no way to get rid of that Platinum Angel, Mika knows there's a lethal crack pack coming his way and scoops it up to Maximus. Game review time. So it's kind of hard to assess these ones outside of the one that I played and the one that I built. I don't want to speak too ill of Garna, but it seemed like Kevin was really struggling on land drops, and we filmed some other games in the future with it, and one of the main things that Kevin did was up the land drops. All the life that Mika was gaining certainly seemed to be the main threat, and there was like an angel sub-theme to the deck, as illustrated by the Valkyrie and Platinum Angel. I think Maximus started off a little bit slow with Averna, but as you saw later on, you just start to get so much ramp every time you cascade. The package is focused around cascade, casting spells from exile, and elementals, and basically 3 of them working in harmony. I was playing mono white flyers, so built-in evasion, plus anthems, which you really can't go wrong with. That meant almost every single beater that I put down was going to be hard to block and get progressively bigger, which I'm all about. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.